Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Keeping It Real with Mary and Charles. Today, the 4th of October, 2021. Let us also recognize our Prime Minister, Mia Amor Motley. She celebrated her birthday on Friday. So, greetings to her on her birthday. And we also
Happy
want
birthday,
to,
Madam Prime Minister.
yes, I'm sure she's had a quiet one, notably. But we also know that she has been working assiduously, that the UNCTAD conference is now on. This morning she had quite a wonderful ceremony. Our own Dame Sandra Mason was present and made her presence known. We're being streamed live at the Geneva. I can't even get the words that I should be able to say it. It's all French, something La Rez in Geneva. So I followed a bit of it this morning. I couldn't follow all. And we're pleased to actually have with us Professor Pedro Welch. And before we do our introductions to Professor Welch, do you have anything to note this afternoon, Charles, with regards to WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram for those followers, of course?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it was even on NBC News this afternoon that Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, um, that services went down probably around 11:30 this morning. So they are working very hard. This is WhatsApp and Facebook trying to get the service restored. So I know the young people are missing the social media quite a bit. So I think it's probably a good thing.
For some of them, not all
Yeah,
of
so
them.
that's yes for some of them. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's down, and I did not even realize that yesterday, sadly, we lost another COVID death. We had another COVID death yesterday evening, so that
Yes.
brings our tally now to 81 deaths. Um,
Yes.
80, I think it's 71-year-old lady. I think it was unvaccinated. I think the prime minister called it it's the virus of the unvaccinated. So
Yes.
we're still
Yes.
encouraging everyone to go and get vaccinated. Um, if you're looking to go to get vaccinated tomorrow, we have building number 2 at Harbor Industrial Park from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then we have the Mile and a Quarter Seventh-day Adventist Church in St. Peter from 9:30 in the morning to 2:30 p.m. The Masonic Center in Salter, St. George. That's also from 9:30 to 2:30 tomorrow. Christ Church, Parish Church Hall, also from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Sharon Marian Church in St. Thomas. That's also from 9:30 in the morning to 2:30 p.m. We have the community's pop-up clinic, the Solidarity House in Harmony Hall, St. Michael, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we have the mobile unit at the Salvation Army headquarters, Reed Street, Bridgetown, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. tomorrow. So all three vaccines will be available at these sites tomorrow um, for at those places I just mentioned. And it looks
Wonderful,
like we can have
Charles.
also, yeah, students from 12 to 18 also can go and get their vaccine also. So we are encouraging everyone to go and get the vaccine. It is very, very important.
Yes. Yes. So we're helping on that campaign. We know lots of persons have their own personal choices. We're not telling you to just run out there. We recommend that you do speak to the professional, that is your doctor, to confirm the aspect of you being administered the vaccine once they've given you the okay and give you a little bit more information on it. um, please go out there at the venues which Charles has mentioned on the vaccine. Now, today we're going to be talking about a very serious topic that has grabbed the attention of many Barbadians in Barbados, as well as across the globe for those Barbadians who are living outside of Barbados, with the respect of the move from being a democratic society to a republic society. And um, we wanted to look at it from a historical perspective. A lot of people may think it's just political, but there's some history behind this particular move. And those individuals who may not understand it, we're going to take a little road down on the historical part and bring us up to that streamline of reasoning from being a democratic society and becoming a republican society. But history has a lot to play with it. And we have our special guest speaker, Professor Pedro L.V. Welch. He is the retired deputy principal of the University of the West Indies and former dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, professor of social and medical history in the Department of History and Philosophy at the UWI. Long list. He is the recipient of a number of awards. These would include a Commonwealth Scholarship in 1984 and a 1992 Johns Hopkins Fellowship. Professor Welch has written or co authored several books, articles including Red and Black over White, Free Colored Women in Pre Emancipation Barbados, and Slave Society in the City, Bridgetown, Barbados, 1680 to 1834. He's delivered several public addresses internationally in the US, the UK, France, and Canada, and in several Caribbean countries, as well as home in Little Barbados. He served as a historical consultant to the BBC and NBC, including the film portraying the ancestry of the acclaimed actress Gwyneth Paltrow. He served for a number of years as chair of the Barbados Task Force on reparations, and has served as a member of the editorial committee of the Journal of Caribbean History. He is, or was, editor of the Journal of the Barbados Museum of Historical Society. And of course, since his retirement from UWI in 2015, he was installed as Professor Emeritus. He's married and has two children. His son, Dr. Pedro Andre Welch, is a medical doctor in the UK, and his daughter, Jem Welch, is a graduate of UWI, and she's also a teacher. He's an elder and an organist of the Seventh day Adventist Church. Let us welcome Professor Pedro L.V. Welch.
Thank you very much for your welcome. It is indeed my pleasure
It is so happy to
to
see you.
look at this, the issue that you identified. I hope you hear me fairly clearly.
Clear, clear, clear.
But
You're hearing us?
yeah, that's wonderful. Let me
Love.
say good evening to your other
Yes, we can hear you.
party there, Charles. Yes, again a pleasure.
Yes.
Um,
We decided.
believe that by the point where you were asking the public to listen to a bit of a historical background. Is am I right? Is that
Yes.
where we were? Good.
Yes.
All right. I don't have too much to say. Um, the fact is that the word republic itself is derived from two Latin words. A Latin word res, res, and the other word publica, publica, that public thing or that public matter. The term came into use around the time of the what we may call one of the first republic, that is the Roman Republic. And the term came to apply to this, which more or less had got rid of the monarchy. They no longer had a king or queen or some kind of monarch. and generally speaking, from that time onward, that is the Roman Empire, and they were, and they had got rid of the kings. Although after that period, they did have other kings or emperors. There is a bit of a misconception, however, and that is that the republic is what we may call the antithesis or the very opposite of the fact remains that there's no necessary separation between a republic and a democracy. In fact, some people will probably argue that a republic is perhaps one of the highest forms of democracy that might exist. A democratic republic, a republic does not have to be a democratic state, but generally speaking, since the time of the Romans, there's an assumption that if you have a republic, thing, meaning really that the people, the public, have a say governed. And that is distinct to a country, a state, a nation in which the people have very little say and in how they're governed. They have no participation in how they're governed. So that's basically, I must say to you, although I would have probably brought this up a little later, that there was a very knowledgeable jurist, a legal luminary, Professor McIntosh. Simeon McIntosh had a view about Barbados. His view was that Barbados was already a republic. That really and truly, since Barbados was a parliamentary democracy, where people voted for people to sit in the parliament, and since the Queen was really more or less a figure with more head and had very little say into how Barbados was governed, as a parliamentary democracy, Barbados decisions were made by a prime minister, and then once the decisions were made, there was no fear our king would interfere in those decisions. So that from his perspective, the only difference between what Barbados had and something which might be a former republic is simply that you might not have called your governor general. You had and your governor general was a representative of the king or queen. But the fact is that the governor, even though the governor general is the head of state, the governor general, the decisions, in fact, were made by the prime minister in cabinet. All the governmental decisions were made by the prime minister cabinet. In fact, then you have what is called the throne speech, when the governor general would state what the government planned to do in a given period. She says what the governor general now will say. My government will do this or my government will do that, which really indicates that the decisions were not out of the Queen. We can say a bit more about that later, but I just thought that historically people ought to know where we began with the Romans, and some people say the Greeks as well, because it was what we know as the Greek. Since that time, Roman times, there have been many states that call themselves a republic. There are many of them, and they're not all democratic. China will refer to itself as being the former republic. North Korea will refer to itself as being a republic, but there are very few persons who will see North Korea state. It is, in fact, a very repressive state, a very autocratic state, but it's called a republic. And the Soviet Union at one time was called the Union of Soviets. The term republic was used there and then. So those are some of these things that we've been discussing the matter. I'll stop there because I suspect that the chef, the meeting will want to say a few words, a few more things before we continue. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Welch. Can you hear me? Everyone still hear me?
You've gone a little low.
Yes, I can hear you.
I don't know.
Sorry about that. question that came up is with regards to your explanation, it says, would changing from a democratic society affect the history of Barbados becoming a republic state?
Well,
That's one of our questions.
well, let me make the point that there's no change. There's no change in the nature, the democratic nature of the Barbarian society at all. And earlier, Professor Simeon McIntosh already made the point, and it's a very strong point, that Barbados
Right.
was already a republic in all but name. So that
Mm,
the change can be seen as more a cosmetic shift in the way how we do things, rather than any major cataclysmic change in our governance structure. The fact that you now have a president rather than a governor general, and that you no longer police force or a Majesty's prison, those facts don't really change anything but way of life or politics or history. I would really think we ought to not to make any distinction between our democratic traditions and the coming of a republic. Our democratic traditions were put in place by
they will
and they will remain in place. Those democratic traditions will include our right to vote for the government of our choice, and we've always had that since at least certainly since the 1940s and even before independence. Those democratic traditions will include our right to speak our minds, our right to challenge and both legally and in terms of what we say publicly, etc. So I really don't think that historically becoming a republic changes anything in any really major way. Um, we have to wait and see, of course, because steps that this current government have made that I really disagree with. Timing of the events. One of the things that we have to watch is that we have had an announcement of who will be president before before a republic is even proclaimed. We've had certain announcements about what we'll be doing, but yet what we call the structural and the constitutional change that have to take place have not yet been put in place. And I really honestly think that matters ought to have been sorted out first, and then we proclaim a republic. But as I said already, there's not going to be any major change. So, from my point of view, whether we move towards a republic, we structure, things will continue in Barbados pretty much as they have continued over the last 50 years or so. So there's
okay.
not going to be any major historic change. No.
Okay. We lost you a bit there with the internet. You were giving a very
Yes.
good
Okay.
explanation. I think Charles may have a question for you.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes. Would this affect our currency in anyway? In any way?
There's no immediate impact on the currency. I mean, there could be, but it would be extremely strange for them, for us to have any. Your strength of your currency depends on a whole lot of things. The strength of your currency is largely a product of the strength of your. And if your economy is strong enough, meaning that you're paying pretty much for your way in life, you're exporting enough to sustain your institutions, then your currency should remain intact. Your currency would receive any impact from becoming a republic is if, in addition to becoming a republic, they have to have some cataclysmic change in our economic fortunes, and that is possible given the COVID on our economy. I mean, we don't know if what COVID will do to our economy, and if we can succeed in getting over the worst of this COVID issue, then perhaps the currency will remain the same. Absolutely no reason why becoming a republic should have any impact whatsoever. I mean, I can't. We should have the Queen or any of our any of our currency notes. I can't tell you if I can't recall. But the fact remains that except for some changes that will take place on our coinage over time, I don't see anything happening as far as the currency is concerned. No.
You think that they would change things on the coins? I don't think there's much to change. Most of the coins have the coat of arms and a flying fish. I think.
Oh yeah. Well, coat of arms.
Yeah.
We had the coat of arms. The current coat of arms is a coat of arms that we've had for independence since independence, and that will not change. In fact, I said the things that might change will relate to the things that reflect the place of the British monarchy in our political life. Things like, for example, you have a Royal Barbados Police Force, your Barbados Regiment or the Defence Force would have had certain memorabilia. They would have had certain that would so those things.
Nothing would have royalty. So those things wouldn't have a name of royalty any longer. They would just be called Barbados Defense. I mean,
yes,
the Royal Barbados Police Force is not going to be the Barbados Police Force.
You have all those you won't use the word royal anymore because you no longer have a monarchy.
Oh. So that means
our
cricket team.
Yes, but I
should not
actually,
be called royals.
I actually heard that.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sarah.
well, I actually heard that on the news.
Yes,
That they're going to. They actually said that before on the news that they're going to change the name for the Royal Barbados Police Force because the title Royal is going to be removed and it's supposed to be redeemed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard that as well. The Prime Minister called it the Barbados Police Force. And I assume, and you won't say Her Majesty's Prison anymore, Glenderry, or not Glenderry, oh Lord, where it is now again?
I don't remember. It's in
You won't say Her Majesty's Prison, don't you?
We don't visit there.
Or some that time. But
don't.
But the only way we use the word royal is if Marie-Stella becomes a queen, and after she became a queen, then you use the word royal in that.
I'm wearing my crown already.
Well, that's the point. You see, that's the point.
Now, Professor Welch, the other question is: moving to a republic state, how would that place Barbados within CARICOM and the rest of the world? I know some people say that Barbados is creme de la creme and we're usually on top. And I think we are on top, but I'm not a political individual, so I'm only going by hearsay. How would we be placed becoming a Republican state with a president? We still will retain our prime minister and her cabinet, but would it shift business on a whole with other territories?
The answer to that is simply no. Barbados was considered the number one developing country in the world, and it was considered so. I'm sure if it still is considered in that way, but it was considered. In fact, when we had gone through some of the crises that we went through, under a previous administration, we were seen as the number one developing country in the world. And other the human organization had, in fact, deemed Barbados to be that. That is because we had a very high um, level of educational attainment. It is also because we've had a fairly stable governmental system. Our economy has really been dying. Yes, problems, the occasional, economic downturns, that would happen to any country. But because we've had in the Caribbean, or our per capita income is amongst some of the highest in the Caribbean region, it meant that we had a certain reputation in CARICOM. We had a reputation in the Caribbean region. Becoming a republic will not change that. We have other republics in CARICOM. Trinidad is a republic. Being a republic hasn't changed Trinidad's status. Dominica, the island of Dominica, is known as the Commonwealth of Dominica. As a republic. We also have Guyana is a republic. So that the republic will have absolutely no particular impact on Barbados' standing within CARICOM or standing with respect to the rest of the world. Perhaps the only impact would be do attract a fairly high percentage of English tourists coming to Barbados. One of the reasons for the English tourists coming to Barbados is that Barbados is considered almost as Little England. It's considered as having much in common with England. Its language, some of its place names, some of its history ties us very closely to England. So it is possible that that becoming a republic, you might find that there are some persons who might see the change as signifying a decision to just from some of our English traditions, and that could possibly have an impact. But that's mere speculation. We simply do not know that becoming a republic will make changes in our standing in the way how we are viewed in the region. Certainly, the same Caribbean, which are already republics, don't have that problem. I don't see why Barbados should have the problem. As I said, the only issue that I see is that there's some things that I really am of the view that should have followed in a particular sequence.
Right.
And I would have hoped that the constitutional changes should be made through Parliament prior to any announcement, and that there should be some decision by the Barbados public as to whether you are going to have an or kind of constitutional presidency where the presidency continues pretty much as the Governor General has been functioning. So that's basically my only reaction to that. But there's we can expect no major changes taking place in Barbados. No major changes taking place to our standing and in the region. We belong to the British Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth includes a whole lot of republics. We're saying in Barbados there's enough republics. That is the nature of the game. That's how it is.
You see mainly
Hope I haven't spoken too much,
advantages.
but that's where we are.
No. You say a lot of advantages there. So therefore, there is a minor point on disadvantages on becoming a republic because of you, as you rightfully stated, we have a lot of comrades within the CARICOM that are Republicans, which you've notably stated, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana. I didn't know that Dominica was Republic. Yeah, Guyana, but I never knew Dominica. I always thought they were Democratic and still joined to the crown. What would that be a loss to the crown? how would it be a loss, I should say, to the crown, to England, from that perspective of becoming a republic, as cutting ties from the crown?
I'm not sure that the loss of the crown. I don't think the crown could care less. I don't think the crown is too worried as to whether Barbados dumps it or not.
Does
166 square mile island over there in the Caribbean Sea. I mean, what is the crown? Except, of course, as I said a little earlier, there's certain traditions, historical traditions that have bound us to England, and to some extent, the denial of a British monarchy and the assumption of a republican status might signal to that we've lost some of the traditional respect of Britain. I mean, but I don't know if that would. I don't know if that would have any about that. There are other countries in the British Commonwealth that are republics, and the monarchy has a very good relationship with them. So I don't see any issue at all as it
well,
relates. I don't think they really care whether we go or come.
I saw an article, um, I think it was last week, by the Canadian newspaper, or it was a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and they mentioned Barbados on the road to becoming a republic. And the question was, do you think that Canada will take suit in that route? And being a bigger state, to, as you say, 166 square miles, Canada being a larger state, do you see them as a country and others making that route possible for themselves, trying to move ahead, as some people may say, as a right to move ahead? Because you know she is plastered all over their dollar bills and stuff like that. What say you on that, Mark?
Well, is this both Canada and Australia
Hmm.
have very strong Marxist traditions, just like Barbados had in the past.
Hmm.
And there has been always a debate in Australia and in Canada over whether they ought to repeal the state. That is not new. That's been going on for quite a long time. If you will recall, when United States nation, the United States of America was born because they rejected monarchy, and in rejecting monarchy, they developed what some people refer as the American Republic, with the president at the head, etc. Um, Canada at the time could could also have gone the way that we now call the United States of America. These colonies, because there were a number of colonies in what we call America now, colonies like Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York was a separate colony. All these are separate colonies,
Mm.
but they dealt. And Canada, which is just to the north, was, well, once the United States got its independence, 1776, Canada retained the monarchy. Canada did not join any fight to become independent. Canada got what was much later, and so did Australia. But there has been a debate, and so there's every possibility strengthen. But a lot would depend on whether the elect Canada or Australia really consider it to be an important enough matter to attend to. I suspect that in the case of Canada, um, Sir McIntosh, if he were alive today, would probably tell you the same thing as he said about Barbados, that both Canada and Australia already are republics in the sense that they practice parliamentary democracy. the people vote for the representatives. So that's where the democracy comes in.
Okay.
And then in addition to people voting for the representatives, they don't have any particular say in the internal politics of the countries. There was, however, in Australia some years ago, a time when the Governor General intervened in the politics of the country, intervened in a very big way. And there are people who at one time felt that Australia is monarchy, because if the Governor General could interfere, then who's to say that it can happen elsewhere in the Commonwealth as well? But by and large, I do not think that will follow quickly. There will have to be a major explosion in those countries for them to move in that direction. I don't think they will. Not immediately.
Okay. Well, they're talking about it. Um, Charles, you have another question, or was that answered?
No, I also know that Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, and Grand Cayman are still under the British rule. Also, um, their head is called the Premier. So you should have some Caribbean islands that are still under the British rule.
And
I'm afraid I
Montserrat.
didn't get. I'm afraid I didn't get that. There's a little bit of you know,
Interruption? No, he said that
in the onion
Oh
there.
no, I
those
was saying Grand Cayman and Bermuda.
Grand Cayman and Bermuda, Turks and
Can
Caicos
you hear
are
me
some
now?
islands that are still under British rule.
Uh,
So his,
Mhm.
I
Under the
think,
British rule.
right. I'm not sure what was his
That's correct. Yeah.
question along that rope in terms of them becoming.
Oh,
I think they would now have to apply for independence because they're still under the crown.
No, I
yes.
just mentioned they're still part.
The truth about it is this: is that
Yeah,
there,
they
there,
are.
there, there been a debate for some time as to whether we have got more out of our move towards independence than those countries have got. Anguilla, as well, as you know, is what we call a British overseas territory. I think that's the term that's generally used by the British.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, the Cayman Islands. These are
Yes.
all overseas territories of the British of the government. And there are some people who will say that they have done very well.
Yeah.
British connections. Montserrat would probably argue that they got out very well, but they maintained their connections. When they had the earthquake and volcanic eruptions, the British, because the British citizens, many of them were able to leave. Probably more than a quarter of the Montserratan population they were able to leave and go to England and live there legally.
Mm.
So that there are persons who in some of those countries who really will argue that they don't they really are not too concerned of discussions about whether the Queen has control or not. These countries all have full internal self-government, like Barbados. They have most of them will have a British governor. That would be the difference. They'll be controlled by a British governor. And in some cases, the British governor has more say in what happens in those territories than perhaps a general, even a president will have in a republican system. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact remains that, as I said, many of those inhabitants of those countries really will think that they're getting the best of both worlds. Um, we might also note that there are those in Martinique and Guadeloupe, French government. There is a word that is used for those called department
We
or departments,
we department.
and they And some people will argue that they have benefited tremendously by being part of France. They have unrestricted. They can go anywhere within the French Empire, and they get assistance, a lot of assistance from France. So I'm not sure that they will be too particularly concerned either in the French territories or the English. I think they're particularly concerned about the notions that we might be concerned about. I think they were of getting the best of both worlds. We have full and internal self-government, but we also tied to Britain. So we continue to get help from them when we want. I think that's how they will see it.
With the changed republic, a question: how does it affect trade with Barbados? I don't think it would be affected, but how does it affect trade?
There's no effect. The current will remain. Our trade is not based on our being a republic or not being a republic.
Hmm.
Our trade is simply based on whatever ties and connections, economic ties and connections we have with other countries. We trade freely in the world. We
Hmm.
uh, we trade with England, we trade with Canada, we trade with Australia. It is true. We trade with
Africa,
United States of America. We trade with Venezuela, Colombia. I mean, we trade with pretty much nearly every country that we wish to,
yeah,
and
and
continue to trade with them. Yes,
now
you see.
this I don't think that this is a well, it's a question in terms of being a republic state. In my mind, I'm thinking it wouldn't affect that either. But with the education, I think a lot of the education system is modeled from the English. How would that affect education in Barbados? Will they look to change it to a setting like what the US has? I'm basing the question that the person is asking along that line because our education system is based on the English. Would that take effect?
Well, our education system is based on the English education system only in some um, minor ways. We all have what we call secondary schools. We have primary schools, tertiary level institutions. But that is true not only of the Barbadian education system. Our system is, I suppose, across the world. The fact remains, however, that discussions in Barbados about the common interest examinations, to mention one thing, there have been discussions about the way how we our children proceed from primary school to secondary school. We proceeded into the tertiary institutions. That there has been not a discussion on that, but that has nothing really to do with our copying of the English system. In fact, the English have made a lot of changes. In England, the system that I went to school with, which was a system where we did the Oxford and Cambridge examinations,
Hmm.
and they left school, the school so many GCE O levels, that's what they were called. And you had the
Yeah, I think that.
GCE A levels,
Yeah.
and they have gone into a system pretty close to what we have at CXC
Hmm.
and what we have, what we call the CSEC examination.
Right.
So our system made a lot of changes in
Yeah.
the way how we function, and I think that those changes will continue. But those changes really have nothing to do with
Being a
whether
republic.
our political or not. They have to do with the fact that over time people have been our education system and they've been reflecting on it and they thought that perhaps we need to make some changes to
Hmm.
improve the efficiency of the system. So I think that will happen, but that will not happen because we become a republic. It will happen more so because people have been reflect on the education system and wish to see it improve and improve in efficiency. That would be the reason.
Yeah, I think the reason why they asked was because they know that GCE is a, I think that's an English paper. So basically, they were looking at, Republic, meaning you're getting rid of most of things that were connected to England. So I didn't think so, because for any student who's studying right now, I would think that they would still be pursuing their education, regardless of if it's CXC or CAPE or GCE. I think that would be beneficial to that student in the long run, would it not? Because it, it, it may be a prerequisite to enter UWI. I don't know, depending on
Hmm.
the field that they're going into.
I, no, no. I think that the fact that we have moved GCO level system ever since many years now, and that we went into the Caribbean examinations council system was already a clear sign that we wanted to make our education system more relevant to the Caribbean. So I don't think that that there's anything that was that a movement away from the monarchy and a movement towards a republic to change that particular momentum. The momentum towards a Caribbean-based education system will continue. Um,
Hmm.
the major changes that will take place when we teach our children civics, when we teach them history, there'll be some new references that will come into the play. Um, we will know. I remember as a boy, we used to sing a song, and I'm not a good singer, so I'm just going to sing part for you. God save our gracious Queen. We used to sing, and once we became independent, that song disappeared off of Barbados. We began to sing in plenty and in time of need when this fair land was young. We began to sing that.
Hmm.
You go and talk to any young person out there, they don't know what God save our gracious queen or they don't know anything about that. So I assume that over time you will get some changes in the content of some of our historical references, etc. But that process had already begun. Attended university, the history that I learned before was British history. I did
Yeah.
British history at GCE level. By the time I got to university, by the time I did my A levels at the Barbados Community College, and then went on to university, the history that I did was in fact the history of the of I
Caribbean.
also did, of course, the history of Latin America and history of the United States of America.
Yeah.
But the history that I studied then was not British history. Although we understood that there's some aspects of British history which were important for us to know because they touch on beyond. I think that I think that for our young people, I think the major change will be only content wise, but not in
Yeah.
terms of the shape of the system. I think the system will pretty much continue as is. We're going to require our young people to be competent in English, competent in mathematics and the sciences, etc., and competent in other aspects of the humanities. I think we're going to expect that continue in the future. Not no matter what governmental system we have.
Um, Someone brought us back to something you were speaking of earlier. The question here is, why, if places like Canada and Australia find it is not beneficial to them, I guess, becoming a republic, does little Barbados think it would be beneficial to them? This question is coming from the US. This is a Bajan living in the US.
I'm just again the question of priorities. I Australia is sufficiently self-confident in its own abilities as a country. It's an independent country. It furnished soldiers to fight in the Second World War. It furnished soldiers to fight in the Vietnam. and in Afghanistan and elsewhere. I mean, Australia really, I don't think it has any lessons to learn from us. It's just are not too concerned about whether you have the Queen head of state or not. They govern their affairs, and as far as they're concerned, the Queen is really more irrelevant than anything else. And the only thing about the monarchy is that for some ceremonial displays at some point, but beyond that, they don't care. They couldn't care two hoots whether the Queen lives or dies. That wouldn't matter to them. And in Canada, Canada has been close to the United States of America, and their politics is less governed by anything that happens in Britain than what we may imagine. So it's not so much a matter of Barbados being this little island that, in fact, from their perspective, who cares? Look at it from the point of view. They don't really care. The fact that Barbados has become a republic will mean nothing,
Nothing.
absolutely nothing to them. It won't make Barbados any bigger, better. It won't make Barbados any more. They won't really care. They will treat Barbados in much the same way they've treated Barbados all over the years. A nice country that has produced some good cricketers. The three W's. That's what that's all they're gonna view us. Beyond that, they're not any interest, and they're not going to see us as doing anything that was particularly important. I said there may be some people in those countries who might look at Barbados, for example, and might make the argument, yes, if we opposition can move towards a Republican state, why not us? Some people argue that, but then I still think the vast majority of people in Canada and Australia couldn't care less. That is not their priority. It is not an issue that really occupies their thinking. Not at all.
And the last question: do you think the monarchy will die if more countries like Barbados pulls themselves away from the monarchy? Do you
Not
think
because
it
of
will
that.
die?
Not because countries like Barbados don't know. The monarchy is important because in England, the monarchy, there's a very long historic tradition of the monarchy. Many centuries ago, in the 17th century, that's around 1642, 1640, the English, they had what was called a glorious revolution when a man called Oliver Cromwell and his group took over power from the. Even before that, I think in the year 1249, there was a document in England called the Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. Magna Carta was a document which spelled out that the people had certain rights and that the monarch could not deny the people their rights. So the monarchy in England developed as an institution where the people understood very clearly that they had power to elect and select a government. But they had embodied in the monarchy. Put this way, the monarchy in England represents stability. Monarchy in England represents a tradition of the past that the English feel they can well continue on into the future. But there are some people in England who have been questioning for years whether it is worthwhile to have a monarchy in the first place. Some of them with money, and they're willing to get rid of the monarchy. But I don't think it happen overnight. The Queen is pretty old now, and a lot will happen if Charles becomes the king. We won't have to wait to see. He is now seen like other, and particularly with Meghan and Harry. The people now see the monarchy as just being just another family with all the same problems that other families have. So I honestly don't think that that Barbados and other countries moving away will change. One hasten the death of the monarchy. The monarchy will die in England if the English people will get tired of it. And I don't see them getting tired of it too soon. But the other countries in Europe that have monarchies, and they do pretty well. There's Luxembourg has what's called the Duchy of Luxembourg. I think there's a king. I think I'm not sure if it's Sweden. You have some countries in Europe which have monarchs, but they have what we call constitutional monarchies, where the monarchy is just a representative of the state. When we see
Right.
the king or queen, they really see the queen or king, queen, their aspirations of the nation. So they'll keep the monarchy as long as they see the royal family as representing them, as representing the best of the nation. That
Well, I think you have enlightened many of us who have been following the program this afternoon, and notably understanding what stages and steps that are going to be taken by the government to go from a democratic state to a republic state. It doesn't change how Barbados is governed. It is just, as we would say, cutting the umbilical cord on its final stage of truly being an independent country. So I
I
know
suppose
they're
you can
going,
see it in that.
yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be listening to the forum between now and Friday the 3rd. We wanted your expertise to spread, that the point between history and republic and the breadth and width that Barbados has taken thus far, and see it not as a change but as a step to progression, as growth, I suppose that's the word to use, because a lot of people don't understand, but why separate now? And I think you mentioned it earlier, it all boils down to change. And you're not, it's like you being at home with your parent and you're still depending on your parent. So if you don't tie off and be your own family, your own individual, you're still tied to your parent. So the monarchy, quote unquote, is like a parent, and you want to be independent. But you can only be truly independent if you sever those ties and do what you need to do as an independent individual, build your own character from that perspective. So I hope others were able to grab that. I think Charles also capitalized on the information as well. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to it before we go off.
No, I certainly learned a lot this afternoon. Lots of history there.
Yeah. So, Professor
Okay.
Welch, we want to thank you very much for your time. And we hope in the future, and I know you're always game for these little things, that we will welcome you back to the show in another capacity. And I certainly learned quite a lot more and understood a bit more on what becoming a republic means to Barbados. And I'm hoping folks out there don't look at it, a lot of people are thinking political, but we have to look at how we have grown as a country, as an island, as a people. So we hope that those who are listening to all the other charter conversations that will be going on throughout the week, that this little tidbit would give them a little insight that they would better understand the journey. Yes?
Okay, Your
So,
Majesty. It, it was my pleasure to have been with you this evening.
yes. And we thank you immensely. Sorry, we thank you very much for your time with us. And before we go, we want to remind the folks out there that it's also Breast Cancer Month. You notice I'm wearing pink. Charles doesn't have on his pink as yet, but we want to remember those who usually donate and participate in all those activities pertaining to Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Just remember it is Breast Cancer Month, and you can play your part in making your donations as well. Thank you very much, Professor Welch. Do have a wonderful
Okay,
afternoon
thank you.
and enjoy the rest of your
Have a good
program.
evening.
Yes,
Have a
please.
good evening. And also, good evening to your
Thank you, sir. Same
work.
to you.
Right.
Ah,
Thank
so
you. Bye bye.
Charles, we had a lovely afternoon, and I know that everyone,
Wow.
because we had a lot of questions coming through. I couldn't get all, but I tried to get as many, and I didn't want to repeat some of the questions that obviously Professor Welch answered. So I'm happy, and I have a better understanding of
Yeah.
everything now. So we hope that the others,
Yeah, it
really,
does. It gives yeah, it was great. A lesson there, a history lesson that he gave us, and because some of the questions I had here, he answered. I think it was important for him. What he said was that we already operated as a republic doing things without having to go back to the UK. So this was just cosmetic surgery, basically just doing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So um, it answered a lot of our questions, I'm sure.
definitely, definitely. So all the questions I had, I think I've asked. If anyone else had any more questions, please feel free to send them to our email. And if we can gravitate to getting those answers, we will. But we also advise you, to follow what conversations are going on now so that you've been given a little bit more insight into what it's all about. And at the same time, we ask you to continue to follow us on Facebook. You can remember when you go on YouTube, subscribe, click like, and hit that notification button for each time we're going to be going on to the show. And we don't have any sad news, but we have little news in that our dear friend Charlie, and we always call him Charlie Brown, will be with us, but he is going to be going off a little bit because he is going to be adding his expertise in another avenue for the time. And we know that everybody has just gotten accustomed to Charles being with us, and it will be very sad to see him go. He says he doesn't want to go, but we know that he loves being with us on the show, and we cannot let him not take up the position that he has been offered because, as we would say, we are doing this as a community service. And of course, if he has found employ, you cannot tell him not to
Yeah.
go and work. So we're not saying to Charles to have any last words because he will be back. If you don't see him, you know he's working. But I want to have the floor to Charles so others would know he is still with us, but let him say those words for you. Well, there, I think the system doesn't want him to go either. So, folks, without further ado, I bid you farewell and look forward to our next show. We will be having our guest who was expected on the statistical Department of Barbados. We will also be having someone from the Conservation Commission and look forward for more details. So, folks, thank you for joining us. Remember, sanitize, wear your mask, social distance. Oh, he's coming back in. Hopefully, it's a quick one. Let's see. Social distance, and we always remind you to call your friend. Let them know how much you care and you're always thinking of them. Let's see if Charles is going to be back. We've just got one more minute. We lost you there for a minute, Charlie
Hi,
Brown.
can you hear me?
Yes, we lost you there.
Yeah, I think the internet went down there for a couple seconds.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm back.
like John King. No, I was just saying to the folks, if you want to say anything before you go, because we know that duty will call
Before, but
sooner. Yes.
uh, yeah, I got a new job, so I'll be taking a I like the show. I love being here, but I I enjoy it, and I would not be gone. It would just be having to arrange my schedule to fit myself in to do the show. So I won't be a stranger. I'll be back sooner rather than later.
Beautiful. The internet has not been kind to us this afternoon, but I know everyone would have heard your comments and know that
No,
you,
it was
yeah, they know that you are warm to the show and you enjoy it and you enjoy the interaction. And as you said, you learn so much on the show.
yeah. You learn a lot from people because even with the young lady we had last week, if you're the director,
Hmm.
there's some things I learned on that show
Hmm.
that was even actually had to tell someone recently because they lost someone in their family. So is a it's good to know these things, and you good to know these things and share them with people.
Yes,
Knowledge is power.
that's right. That's right. So we know that Charles will be with us from
I
time to
want
time when his
I,
schedule.
I want point two. Yeah, and I was reading today too that when you go to the pump now, you're paying 4 cents less for gasoline.
Oh
So
yes,
the
4 cents.
gas
That
price is now
came
going to
up
three
after
ninety
midnight.
five. I think it is now. Yes,
$3.95. Four
that's
cents.
correct. So you pay 4 cents less.
Well,
However,
just remember.
cur- diesel and kerosene are still up.
Well, I think people are driving more or should be driving less. I'm not sure.
Should, should we drive? Yeah, should we drive less?
Should be driving less. And the other point I had to make, they said
But
that
yeah.
they said that it went down at midnight, but nobody be filling up tanks at midnight. We lost Charlie again. All right, folks. We bid you adieu and thank you for joining us. Look out for us next week. Hopefully, we won't have any more hiccups. And thank you for joining the show. Remember, wear your mask, sanitize, social distance, call your friend, and please make a query with your doctor about getting vaccinated. It helps us to progress.